Hello everyone, and welcome to Mr. Simplifies Tutorials. In this video we're going to look at the product lifecycle model. So what is the product lifecycle model? We briefly discussed and just touched upon the product lifecycle model in our previous video, so I thought it's important that I shed some more light on the product lifecycle. It is basically a model used for devising marketing and sales strategies. Essentially, it is a plot of the lifetime of a product in terms of its sales against the passage of time. That is a very simple way of describing the model. So what is it used for? What is the tool or the model used for? It is basically used to predict the stages a product or a brand goes through during its entire lifetime. So right from the stages where a product is developed and then launched to the stages where you have a steady growth in sales, to the stages where there is a rapid growth, and then finally to the stages where the growth starts slowing down and ultimately the growth ceases to exist. So this is plotted against time, and that is essentially what the product lifecycle model is. So it's basically also a tool used for forecasting sales trends, and it therefore helps businesses understand where to focus their investments, their revenues, because a business could have a wide portfolio of products, and plotting a product life cycle would help the business understand if a product is going through a growth stage or a maturity stage, and therefore align its investment strategies accordingly. And once a product approaches a decline stage, which obviously we'll understand the stages during the course of this video, but the decline stage is the final stage, and once products approach these decline stages, companies would need to then firstly understand if there is life left in the product itself, and then develop strategies to possibly extend its life and send it through to another maturity stage or another growth stage. Okay, so let's look at the product lifecycle model and discuss these stages. Now, as you can see here in this chart, it's essentially a plot of the sales of a product or a brand or a portfolio of products and brands against time. So this is like a typical representation of a product lifecycle model. Please note that the product extension part of it, which is circled here for your reference, is not compulsorily a part of each product life cycle. I've added it for a specific reason, and that reason is that a lot of products can go through, with some good strategies, can go through a product extension period through which sales can take off once again and the product can come back to life. We'll discuss all of that during the course of this video, of course. So essentially, the very first stage after the development of a product is the introduction phase, where the growth of the product, the growth of sales of the product is slow, it's steady, and then we approach a stage where obviously if the product is successful, we expect the growth to increase, the rate of growth to rapidly increase, and this is what is called the growth stage. And then there comes a time where the rate of growth steadies off. So the rate of growth kind of matures, and that is called the maturity stage, and it's normally at this maturity stage that the trend is reversed. And then ultimately we go through a phase which is called the decline phase, and it's in this decline phase that the rate of growth of sales slowly reduces, and ultimately the product ceases to exist because of it. But as I've already mentioned, a lot of products can go through the product extension stage, which we will be discussing in the course of this video. So now that we know that there are several stages: introduction, growth, maturity, and decline, what strategies would companies adopt to execute these stages perfectly? So basically, for the introduction stage, companies need to adapt a penetrative pricing strategy, competitive pricing, and more than competitive, it's a penetrative strategy to make sure that the product penetrates the market, the product penetrates the target audiences, and then early adopters are identified so that the product or the concept can be introduced to. And then heavy focus on marketing to ensure that there is product awareness and brand awareness. So these are things that companies do to actually introduce the product to the market, and therefore all of this belongs to the introduction stage. And then we move on to the strategies for the growth stage. At this stage, it's been identified that the product has great potential to be successful, to be a market leader, so therefore we look at widening the customer base and target new markets. We maximize distribution, we maximize production, and always ensure that there's good stock, there's good availability, and the demand for the product is met. That's why we have a growth. That's why we have a growth in sales, because we are able to match the demand. And then we also don't stop at in terms of improving the product. We invest in continual product development, and then we improve the product by adding new features. And therefore we have new mobile phone models coming up every year. They've got subtle new features which are introduced in order to develop the product further. We'll get on to some examples later, obviously, but next in line are the strategies for the maturity stage. So when we understand that a product or a brand or a portfolio of products or brands are going through a maturity stage, we start examining extension strategies. So these are strategies wherein we try and identify new markets, new customer bases, new USPs. We make changes to products, we bring new USPs, we introduce new USPs and bring them to the limelight. We try our level best to ensure that the product doesn't go into a decline state. And then we also balance out our production if we understand that extension strategies aren't going to work for our brand, for our portfolio of brands, or whatever be the case. If we understand that extension strategies are not going to revive the product or the concept, we have to balance out the production. Otherwise there will be a surplus and there is a high chance of loss. So what about the last stage, the decline stage? What strategies do you adapt there? We basically try and ensure that we still maximize profits, and this can be done by limiting the marketing expenditure. And then we obviously also have to get rid of all of our stock and also try and milk the market as much as possible. So we adopt very competitive pricing strategies to make sure that we're still edging ahead of the competition. We also provide support and brand value to our existing customers to make sure they keep coming back to us and they stick to us. But if a product has approached the decline stage, then there's a very high chance that the decline stage is going to continue, because a lot of the times products go through decline stages because of changes in technology, changes in customer behaviors, and a lot of other factors which cannot be controlled. Now let's look at some examples. Now this is very interesting. I want you to focus on this section because we've been speaking about products and a portfolio of products. In terms of examples, what I've actually done is, instead of just using the tried and tested examples that everybody else uses, like the Apple iPhone or the Apple iPod, I've taken examples from the technology sector, the mobile phone sector, companies, and I've looked at the whole company portfolio overall. So in this example we're going to look at the company Nokia in itself and the sales figures for that, basically as a projection. So we'll look at the year 1995 to 2002, where there seemed to have been an introduction phase, because the world was mobile phones were new at that time, and the sturdiness of the mobile phones developed by Nokia seemed to really start attracting attention. And then we had that amazing, enormous growth rate between the years 2002 and 2009 approximately, and then a maturity stage in the next couple of years, and then after that we saw the brand declining at a steady state, and it has been declining until date, I would say. So it's safe to say that it actually underwent a decline which is continuing till date. But as of 2017, May 2017, when this video was recorded, there is certain news that Nokia is investing heavily into coming back into the market, and is making the right partnerships and developing new ideas, developing new concepts, etc., and trying to make a huge comeback of sorts into the market. So will we have an extension phase? Only time will tell. Okay, so we move on to our next example, which is Samsung mobiles. Again, it had an introduction phase, and then it had a growth stage, and then we don't actually know. I mean, this is kind of speculative, but there is a high possibility that we are at a sort of a maturity stage where the growth of sales would possibly stabilize for a good amount of time, because the market is very competitive at the moment, the mobile phone market. And yes, sorry, I forgot to mention that in terms of Samsung, we're specifically looking at Samsung mobiles, because as you'd understand, Samsung is a enormous organization that goes on from developing military technologies to television sets, music systems, and a whole portfolio of products. So we are looking at Samsung mobiles in particular. So after the growth stage that Samsung has experienced, we can say that it is currently going through a sort of a mixture of growth and maturity. But even if it's considered to be at a maturity stage, it is very difficult to predict how long this maturity phase is going to go on, because essentially that is one of the flaws, that is one of the criticisms, one of the question marks on the reliability of the whole model itself, which we are coming to. Reliability. So as just seen in the chart for Samsung mobiles, we can't predict, we cannot actually determine if a lot of brands, portfolio of brands, concepts, companies, etc. are actually going to stay in the maturity stage or the growth stage for a number of years or a number of months. So it's just too difficult to predict the length of any phase in the model. Growth stages can still be predicted, because nothing grows on a phenomenal rate for very lengthy amounts of time. So you can still predict the growth stage to a certain extent, but maturity stages are very, very difficult to predict, almost impossible. For example, a lot of FMCG products, which you can name very easily, I would say, like Heinz mayonnaise, ketchups, baked beans, etc., Colgate toothpastes, Nescafe coffee, and the various other products. A lot of FMCG products seem to have like a continual maturity stage, because the demand for them is just continual. They're everyday essential products, so they're definitely not going to be getting phased out anytime soon. It doesn't seem like it. So they basically go through like an endless maturity phase. So that is where the model actually fails, to be honest, in a certain way, because it is not completely proficient in actually predicting maturity stages. And obviously, as we see from our FMCG examples that we just took, declines are not absolutely certain for all products. They can go through endless maturity stages, which the model has no scope or no room for. Okay, hopefully that was a good introduction, a brief overview of the product lifecycle model for you. Hopefully that was useful, and any questions, as usual, please fire away in the comment section. And thank you very much for your attention. And if you like the video, if you like all the other videos, I urge you to check all the videos in the channel. Please check them out, subscribe to the channel, and keep liking and sharing my videos for more content on a more regular basis. Thank you very much. Bye bye.